Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to tell you about what if Naruto have an unknown dojutsu. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Everything was at peace by the time the rabbit goddess was defeated. For a while, at least. War will never be eradicated from the planet. One intended to correct this. Sage of the Six Paths, everything he uses is extremely powerful, but his eyes are his most potent weapons. The sage's eyes see everything. From the ferocity of beasts to the greed within people, their desire for power, and the brutality that war and conflict can inflict on the world. The sage swore to protect and preserve, and two new eyes were born to that end. The Rinnegan gave birth to the Byakugan and Sharingan. Both are formidable in their own right. He claimed that he would bring peace to the world by touching everyone's hearts and minds and telling them that fighting over such nonsense is pointless. However, due to differing beliefs with the sage, one of the people at the time stole some of the sage's blood and power for himself and fled to the moon to become stronger. He was confident in his own peacemaking strategy. His plan was to gain an advantage through war, but the sage would never allow it. But he knew that if he chose to oppose the sage, he would be no match for the incredible power of the sage's eyes. It wasn't until his final days that he finally created something resembling the sage's eyes. By fusing the sage's blood and chakra with the moon itself, the power was created. The energy was incredible, and it could be exactly what he needs to change the world. He kept the secret to himself because he wanted to die with it so that no one could possess the power he created. His eyes had changed color, and he had command of all the celestial bodies. Stars, planets, comets, and meteoroids are all examples of celestial bodies. To keep his power, he scattered different parts of his chakra throughout the galaxy, some in heavenly bodies and some in the vast nothingness. And there will come a time when he will return to complete his mission. The goddess call will restore the lost prowess. Sutsuki Hiramu. 12 years ago, Hidden Leaf Village. The mighty beast's roar erupted throughout the land, filling the night sky with smoke and ash. It was late at night, and fire was raging throughout the city and its outskirts. Nothing could separate the Yondaime Hoikage's gaze from the Kyuubi, or the nine-tailed demon fox, as the beast roared once more. Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime, 4th, Hoikage, stood atop Hoikage Rock's massive sculpture of his face. He had no idea how the fox appeared out of nowhere. After all, it was sealed inside his wife, Kushina Uzumaki, who was already a Jinchuriki. The Kyuubi is one of the planet's 9 immortal-tailed beasts, or Biju. The beasts are living manifestations of chakra. A Jinchuriki was a person who possessed a sealed Biju. In this case, the Jinchuriki was the Hoikage's own wife. She was also expecting a baby boy at the time, and he could only hope for her safety because the extraction of a tailed beast is lethal. He could only hope that the Uzumaki's high life force would be enough to get to her and save her and their son, Naruto. However, before he could even consider approaching Kushina, he had to first stop the Nine Tails. Minato was deep in thought as the mighty beast rampaged around the village. I'll have to get past the Kyuubi first if I want to save Kushina and Naruto. He looked at the monster emotionlessly as it threw a slew of trees away as if it were nothing. I could first disable its movements, then use the time I have left to save my wife and son. His head shook. No, I'm not going to put my life in danger without thinking. I'll have to ask Sandaime for assistance in immobilizing it before I can rescue Kushina. Okay, time to... He was interrupted from his battle plan when he noticed the Kyuubi staring at him with murderous intent, but the Yondaime maintained a stern expression. The fox roared at Minato, drawing his attention to the red color in the Kyuubi's eyes, which had 3 black tomos in the center. The blonde raised an eyebrow in perplexity. Sharingan? How could? He had an inspiration. That's it. It's under control. Hoikage-sama, a voice in his head said. Minato was familiar with this voice. It belonged to Inoichi, the clan head of the Yamanaka clan. Inoichi has one of the best minds in the village, rivaled only by his teammate Shikaku Nara. His techniques involve mind control and linking a person's brain with his own, allowing him to communicate with the blonde. What is your take on the situation? Minato didn't respond right away because he was preoccupied with the roaring Biju. A growing ball of chakra appeared at the Kyuubi's mouth, and the Yondaime were well aware of what it was. The tailed beast ball, also known as Bijudama. The Bijudama continued to grow, but the Hokage remained unmoved. Finally, the fox let go, and it dashed towards Hokage Rock, where Minato was. The blonde took out a three-pronged kunai with a unique seal on its handle and held it with both hands. As the ball approached, he looked at the village, which appeared to have only minor damage. He returned his attention to the Bijudama and closed his eyes. Hiraishin. He opened his eyes and said the word aloud, causing the tailed beast ball to vanish into thin air. Minato smirked at the beast as he twirled the kunai in his finger, who only growled in response. The blonde jumped to the ground and returned his attention to his thoughts as he ran towards the village. "Are you still around, Inoichi?" he inquired. "I've arrived, Hokage-sama." "Did anything happen? I apologize for not continuing our conversation earlier. I had to stop the Kyuubi from firing a potentially obliterating Bijudama." "It's all right, Hokage-sama. It's all for the sake of the village. How would you assess the situation? I would like you to send a few Anbu to check on Kushina and see if she is stable. Please notify Sandaime-sama that I will require his and the village's help in dealing with the Kyuubi. I'm going to Kushina first to check on her health, and then I'll join everyone in the battle. Your wife is well known to us, Hokage-sama. She is doing well just a few days after giving birth to your son." Minato's eyes widened as a result of this. She has already given birth? But she wasn't due to go into labor until the next day. Are you sure? Is the baby doing well? Is my Naruto in good shape? He worriedly inquired. He's doing well, too, according to Kakashi and a few other Anbus. Meanwhile, I'll relay your message to Sandaime-sama. Yondaime-sama, may victory shine upon us. I hope so, Inoichi, was the last thing he said before the Yamanaka clan head cut them off. Minato concentrated solely on running, but in the process, he felt someone else's chakra nearby. He teleported out of the way just in time to avoid being grabbed by two chakra chains. As both of them arrived at the training field, the blonde threw a kunai at whoever had attacked him. Minato locked his gaze on his opponent as he drew one of his signature kunai. He wore a hood and wore a mask over his face. His right eye had a small hole in it and was glowing red. For a brief moment, the Hokage's gaze shifted to the village before returning to the mysterious man. I rely on you, Hiruzen-sama. I need to deal with this man first, so please protect the village. He closed his eyes and charged forward, kunai in hand, just as the mysterious stranger did, but with chains in his arms. Kyuubi vs Hiruzen Sarutobi. Hiruzen jumped across the rooftops of the village buildings, having just received Minato's message to keep the Kyuubi at bay until he arrived. He looked up to see one of the beast's massive paws about to crush him. He jumped out of the way and began making hand gestures. Kaden. Carry Enden. Says Kaden. He screamed, sending dragon-shaped flames from all directions at the paw. As he felt the flames, the fox's eyes widened. It growled and drew his hand back, tossing a large piece of debris back to the old man in the process. Hiruzen bit his thumb and pressed his palm against the ground. Kuchios no Jutsu. Says one. Enma, his personal summon, appeared in the form of a staff, and the Sandaime used it to shatter the large debris into several smaller pieces. He stared at the Kyuubi's mysterious eyes, a jutsu he was familiar with. After all, he was one of the men behind the Konoha Uchiha massacre. More specifically, the one who sanctioned the massacre. Sharingan? He wondered. Something strange is happening here. When he noticed another large piece of debris heading towards him, he was immediately cut off from his thoughts. He dodged out of the way and began running towards the beast because he didn't have enough time to use his staff. Taiga. Doridoden. The ground beneath the Kyuubi became wet, forcing the fox to look down. It was clinging to the muddy earth beneath him. Hiruzen added more chakra to stall it as it let out another roar and struggled to be free. Shuriken Cage Bunshin no Jutsu. He exclaimed, launching dozens of shurikens at the helpless fox. The Kyuubi glared at him and roared in response to the shurikens flying towards it. Hiruzen glared at the beast, panting slightly as his earth jutsu took its toll. Kaiten. Ryuka no Jutsu. Yelled one group of chunins, combining their individual powers to form a large dragon-shaped flame. Sweden. Mizurapa. Yelled another group of chunins, releasing water jets from their mouths in a single stream towards the Kyuubi. The attacks landed perfectly on the beast, creating steam in the process. Hiruzen jumped to the rooftop of a nearby building, gripped his staff tightly, and began attacking the Kyuubi's head with the enlarged version of his weapon. Unfortunately, he only got a few hits because the Biju smacked him away with its free claw. Hiruzen bounced back quickly after being smacked and landed on his feet. He wiped a trickle of blood from the side of his mouth and was about to weave some more hand signs when he was stopped by a certain voice. "Sorry for the delay, Sandame-sama." When the old man turned around, he saw Inoichi standing alongside Shikaku and Choza, both clan heads. Shikaku plays the Nara, and Choza plays the Akamichi. The operation is ready to begin. Masked Man vs. Minato Namikaze. Both kunai and chains clashed as they attempted to outdo each other, but to no avail. They've been fighting for over 10 minutes now, and despite the fact that the battle is fast-paced, they appear to be on equal footing, with neither gaining an advantage. Sharingan, Minato thought as he avoided another chakra chain swipe. Ability to travel to Konoha, command of the Kyuubi, he had an inspiration. "Don't tell me. You're Madara Uchiha?" he inquired. The man replied quietly, dodging a kunai thrown by the Yondaime. "What are your thoughts? What are you doing?" They clashed once more and were separated by sheer force. "Do you have a grudge against the village or the people who live there?" "It makes no difference who I have a grudge against. But my intentions are to bring about world peace and harmony." As his eyes changed shape, he noticed Minato preparing his signature technique. Rasengan. He screamed aloud, charging towards his opponent with a large ball of blue chakra in hand, but to his horror, the masked man simply ignored his attack. "How did you get past my attack? That should have been a home run." The masked man started chuckling slightly. "I guess I'll have to thank my rigorous training at the time. It's unusual to see cages at your level fall to their knees." As they charged at each other again, Minato simply stared at him. The blonde threw one of his kunai at the stranger, which went through his mask. As they got closer, the masked man threw out his arm, attempting to reach the Hokage's body. "I won!" he exclaimed as his hand approached Minato. The blonde teleported above his opponent and grabbed the kunai he had just thrown, just as his hand was about to touch him. "Rasengan!" he yelled, slamming the stranger in the back and crushing him to the ground. "Flying Raijin. Level 2, he exhaled as he finished his attack. He jumped away and maintained a defensive stance, whereas the masked man simply stood up and brushed the dirt off his clothes. "To think you were capable of causing harm to me," he mocked. "Yondaime, you truly deserve your name. I'll leave the village's destruction to the Nine Tails. We should get together again." His body began to dematerialize and mysteriously warp away from view, but not before leaving one final line. "A piece of advice," he said, raising an eyebrow from the blonde. "If you are successful in defeating the Kyuubi, you should not celebrate too soon. And why is that? The Yondaime asked, his eyes narrowed. Don't you sense it? The strange sensation that appears to be from another world? Minato raised an eyebrow at his opponent's statements, clearly perplexed by what he was implying. It's a shame you can't tell us what it is. Yellow flash, may it lead to your demise. His body then warped away, disappearing from view. What is he talking about? He wondered to himself before returning to the village. He was known as the Yellow Flash of the Leaf for his incredible speed and was hailed as the fastest shinobi ever, but he could be late at the most crucial of times. Just like today. After 10 minutes. He finally arrived at Kushina's location after what seemed like an eternity. He noticed her panting heavily against a small basket atop a rock. He approached her and knelt down. He pressed his palm against her brow to see if she was hot or not. It's a good thing she's not. Are you okay, Kushina-chan? He asked, and she opened her eyes to see her beloved husband standing before her. Minato! Exclaimed she. I'm all right. Simply the side effects of the Kyuubi extraction. But I'm so glad you're here. Is the community safe? The blonde exhaled a sigh of relief. Thank you, Kami, for keeping Kushina safe. Any normal person would have died after being extracted by a tailed beast. I requested that Sandaime-sama and the other clan heads keep the Biju at bay until I arrived. I needed to check on you first, you see. She grinned. Same old Minato, she exhaled, making him grin in embarrassment. When a voice spoke behind the Hokage, they were cut off from their conversation. Minato, said the voice, and the blonde turned to see Hiruzen panting slightly while holding his staff. The operation was a failure. The Kyuubi is far too powerful for us to handle. The only way to stop it right now is to encase the beast in a Jinchuriki. The unfortunate person cursed with the fox will be protected, just like Kushina-chan over there. He looked over at the redhead woman sitting next to Minato. Hokage-sama, there is no other way. If we want to secure our village's future, we must seal it. I see what you're saying. Minato rose to his feet and stroked his chin a few times. Alright. I agree with your idea of sealing it in a Jinchuriki, and I think I know who to seal the fox into, he said to his son before returning his attention to the old man. We'll have to get its attention first, Sandaime-sama. Do you have any suggestions? You're already ahead of me. He created a few hand signs that culminated in the ram seal. Jikaki no Jutsu, Kaiten. He exhaled a large fireball and launched it toward the Kyuubi, striking it squarely on the head. As a result, the mighty beast turned to look in the direction of Hiruzen before roaring and slowly approaching them. Minato fixed his gaze on the Biju as he realized something. Wait a minute. The chakra that the Kyuubi holds will be too much for Naruto if I try to seal it inside his body. If that happens, he could be possessed by the beast at any time. He had an inspiration. I could certainly make use of that, but I will have to sacrifice my own soul. The blonde looked up to see the Kyuubi approaching them. Hiruzen maintained a battle stance while Minato stared blankly. Do you have anything planned for the future, Minato? The blonde simply nodded and shut his eyes. Before returning to the beast, the Sandaime raised an eyebrow at him. The Yondaime finally opened his eyes and made a few hand gestures before slamming his palms together when the Kyuubi was about a kilometer away. He yelled, Shiki Fien. And the death god, Shinigami, appeared behind him. As a few Anbu approached the area, Hiruzen and Kushina's eyes widened. So that's what he was thinking. Minato, what are you thinking? The old man was perplexed as to why he would summon the Shinigami at this time. But why the Shinigami? Is he going to make a sacrifice? Kushina wondered, now that she could stand up after sitting for so long. The Kyuubi roared as its massive paw fell on the three of them, but it appeared to be aiming for the baby inside the basket. Minato and Kushina jumped in instinctively, using their bodies to protect their flesh and blood. They waited for the excruciating pain, but it never arrived. Hiruzen, who was standing nearby, was taken aback by what he was witnessing. The fox's eyes were closed, and its paw came to a halt just before its claws could reach Minato or Kushina. When the couple opened their eyes, they noticed that the beast was trembling and growling angrily. Yondaime. Minato Namikaze, right? A voice inside the Hokage's head said. Are you talking to me, Kyuubi? Minato responded in disbelief. How? And how did you find out who I am? I have no time to explain. Just get me in anyone. When the fox opened its eyes, the three noticed that it no longer possessed the Sharingan. Its eyes had returned to normal. What, you're not a thing? Can you tell me your gender? The Shinigami summoned its chakra chains as it began to claim Minato's soul, much to Kushina's horror and Hiruzen's sympathy. Of course not. You idiot, I'm a guy. The beast then felt his chakra split in two, making him feel weaker than usual. What are you up to? I can't seal your entire self inside an infant child, he explained, and the Kyuubi grunted in perplexity. I apologize, but I intend to burden my son with the burden of being a Jinchuriki. I'm confident he'll put your power to good use. Alright, just get up. I will not be ruled by that damn Uchiha. I'd prefer to be sealed in person. Being controlled by someone is a disgrace to me. His yin and yang chakras finally separated, with the latter going inside the baby in the basket and the former going inside Minato himself. Seal of the 8 trigrams. Minato slammed his palm against the ground as a seal appeared in his and his son's abdomens. The fox panted, his arms limp from the effects of being sealed in and having his chakra split in two. Kushina approached Minato, who was panting and kneeling on the ground, and patted him on the shoulder before turning to face the Kyuubi. Kurama, she thought, unaware that Minato had heard her. Please look after my son. The burden of being a Jinchuriki will be difficult to bear, but I know he'll have good friends and everyone will come to like him when the time comes. He, like me, will not use your power for its own sake. You have my word on it, habanero. The Kyuubi replied, looking up and grinning at her, causing the blonde to widen his eyes in surprise. Was his wife friends with the fox? And he's even given her a nickname? Anyone you care about is someone I care about as well, Kushina. Would you like to place a bet that this will be our last meeting? She grinned. You're all set. If your kit can persuade me to give him the full extent of my power, I won't ever complain if he shows me affection like you do. The beast's massive paw curled into a fist and thrust forward towards the three. Okay. But if he doesn't, feel free to tease him about anything you want. She stepped forward as Minato and Hiruzen wondered if she had a death wish. She came to a halt just in front of his paw and thrust her own fist against it, accepting the fist bump. Adieu, Kurama. When you attacked the village, I knew you weren't yourself. What do you think you're expecting? The beast known as Kurama responded with a slightly arrogant tone. I'm not going to stoop so low as to attack a village. I'm much better than that. He gave her one last grin before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Kushina returned her attention to the two, who were staring at what had just happened. When she noticed them about to speak, she raised her hand to stop them before pointing to Minato and asking the first question. You and the Kyuubi knew each other? Exclaimed Minato, who had managed to stand up after sealing the chakra of the 9 tails into his body. Of course, she replied, shrugging her shoulders. We used to be partners. I treated him as if he were a friend, and he respects me in return. But after I became pregnant and stopped being a shinobi for a while, he became bored and was always looking for action. Then why would he attack Konoha? Hiruzen wondered, oblivious to the Sharingan that the Kyuubi had before reverting to its original color. I think Kurama is possessed by something, Sandaime-sama, Kushina mused, scratching her chin. I know he would never attack the village, I say to myself. Did you not notice his eyes? The elderly gentleman shook his head. They were Sharingan before returning to normal. Sharingan? He exclaimed, stunned. Yeah. When Kurama was extracted from me, a masked man with the Sharingan chained my limbs. I believe that's the man who brainwashed Kurama into destroying the village. I believe you're correct, Minato said. I fought that man on my way here, and I'm surprised he survived so long. The question is, who is behind it? The two people in front of him shook their heads. I'm going to guess, but I don't think it's possible. Kushina and Hiruzen both raised an eyebrow. I think he might be. His sentence was cut short when they heard something burning and a loud noise behind them. When they turned around, there was nothing in the forest, but when they looked up, they saw a massive meteor fall from the sky, heading towards the village. The three were taken aback by what they were seeing, especially Minato, who had just realized something. I see. So that's what he meant when he said, "Don't you feel it?" Pondered the blonde. We have to put a stop to it. If we don't, it will crash in the village. But how? He gave Kushina a sad look before sighing and closing his eyes. He had almost no chakra left. Anbu! He exclaimed, and 3 members of the Anbu kneeled in front of him. Return to the village and ensure the villagers' safety. I'm going to shoot that meteor out of the sky. The 3 shunshined out of the area to comply, leaving only the Hokage and the 2 wide-eyed people behind him. Are you going to stop that meteor? You simply cannot. Exclaimed Kushina. Not on your own. Allow me to assist you. I still have chakra. As tears sting the corners of Kushina's eyes, Minato shook his head. Minato, you know that recklessness will get you killed. The elderly man said sharply. How can you hope to stop a meteor of that size? I will do what is necessary. He took out one of his kunai and clutched it tightly. I must protect the village at all costs as the Hokage. Even if it means putting my life in danger. Please. Wailed Kushina, openly crying. You can't do it. Don't refuse the assistance of those around you. As your wife, you must. She was interrupted mid-sentence when she felt Minato's lips press against hers. He pulled away from their kiss after a few seconds and smiled at her tear-stained face. He looked at both of them before beginning to run in the direction of the falling meteor. Take care of the village for me. He yelled. As soon as he got to the point where he could jump towards the falling rock, he came to a halt to assess the situation. My chakra levels are extremely low, and I can't yet rely on the Kyuubi. He is still recovering from the ordeal he went through earlier. Excellent. Then this will be my final performance. He hurled a Hiraishin kunai at the rock. To protect the village, he said internally as he prepared the last of his chakra. I will put my own life on the line to ensure everyone's safety. He drew out his right hand and began to form the Rasengan. But not just any ordinary one. That is my responsibility as Hokage. He blinked open his eyes and stared at the approaching meteor. He teleported to the massive rock and thrust out his arm, which was equipped with his technique. I will do whatever it takes for Hiruzen-sensei, Jiraiya-sensei, Kakashi, Obito, Rin, Kushina-chan, and little Naruto. His Rasengan grew to the size of a small meteor all of a sudden. Oh, Rasengan. As he screamed, the chakra ball collided with the massive celestial body, and the two began a tug-of-war battle for supremacy. Minato clenched his teeth as he felt his chakra begin to fade. He won't be around much longer. 6 imaginary hands appeared beside him and began channeling their own chakra towards his Rasengan, enlarging it. The blonde's eyes widened as he imagined Hiruzen, Jiraiya, Kushina, a young Kakashi, Rin, and Obito standing beside him, each with his own chakra. Tears welled up in his eyes as the most important people in his life assisted him in saving the world. They turned to face him and smiled, expressing their support. I've always been proud of you, Minato, said Hiruzen. You go, kid. Jiraiya exclaimed, thumbs up. Don't back down now, or you'll feel my fists. Kushina said, cracking her knuckles. "You've got this, sensei. We believe in you," exclaimed Kakashi, Rin, and Obito together. He felt a surge of determination. Seeing them gave him newfound courage. He drew out every last bit of chakra he had left, unafraid of what was to come. After that, the battle began to shift in Minato's favor. After what seemed like a few seconds, the meteor exploded into a million pieces, trapping the Hokage, who lacked the chakra to teleport out of the area. Returning to the village, cheers and happy roars erupted throughout Konoha village. They had just witnessed the meteor threatening to crash into their village explode, which meant another Leaf Village victory. Because they had won the previous 3 world wars, they were widely regarded as the strongest of the 5 elemental nations. A defeat at the hands of a natural force would be disrespectful and disastrous for their image. Hiruzen and Kushina, on the other hand, were the only ones who were not smiling. They were both worried as they stood on the outskirts of Konoha. Both were thinking the same thing at the same time. What became of Minato? Is he still alive? What happened to him? They exchanged glances and nodded, knowing what they should do at the time. Kushina wrapped Naruto in a blanket as she and the Sandame dashed towards Minato's location, hoping he was okay despite having stopped such a massive threat. Minato's location, on the outskirts of Konoha. The blonde was defeated and lying on the ground. His Hokage coat was covered in burns, and his skin was smoking. His body was riddled with so many wounds that standing up was nearly impossible. Hundreds of rock fragments surrounded him. Stopping the meteor had a cost, and now it was time to pay. Minato's eyes slowly opened and he gazed up at the night sky. He tried to move his head to get a better view of his surroundings, but it was futile. He tried, but a sharp hissing pain greeted him, and he realized his end was near. What could he do if he couldn't move his head? He attempted to move his arms, but only his fingers moved. The only thing he could do at this point was hope that someone would find him before it was too late. My life may end here, but I will die a happy man, knowing I have done my duty as the Hokage of the village, he reasoned. That is the most important thing, but... He started recalling every memory he had with his wife. Are you hurt? He asked, looking into the red-haired girl he was carrying's purple eyes. Are you the one who rescued me? Kushina inquired, leaning in close to the blonde's face, while he blushed furiously at her proximity. One day, I hope to be the Hokage, he exclaimed proudly as she gazed deep into his eyes, lost in her valley of emotions. I like you, Minato, she admitted, dwindling her fingers as she shyly tried to tear her gaze away from him. Will you marry me, Kushina-chan? He inquired as she slapped her hands over her mouth to muffle a joyful squeal. Kushina, please forgive me if I am unable to be with you as we raise our son. I did it for you as well, to protect you and our son. It's my responsibility as a loving father and husband, not as the Hokage. Footsteps became more audible as his gaze was drawn to the source of the sound. The ground was covered in burns, and rock fragments littered the landscape. Hiruzen and Kushina followed the path until they came to a large crater, where they discovered Minato's body. Tears welled up again in Kushina's eyes as they dashed inside the crater to find the fallen Hokage. You idiot! Screamed Kushina as she knelt beside her husband on the ground, gently laying Naruto beside her. I told you you couldn't do it by yourself. But, Kushina, I did. He responded haltingly. No. That is not the case. I'll be alone for the rest of my life as a result of what you did." She wept into her hands. "Baka. Why did you have to do that? It pains me so much to see you in that condition. I hate to think you're going to die, but you just slammed it right into my face." Minato could only look at her with sadness. He turned to face Hiruzen, who was crying as well. "Hiruzen-sensei, please look after the V village for me. F for each and every one. Please forgive me for being reckless once more. I just didn't want anyone to get involved. I was willing to take the risk because I am the Hokage." He breathed a sigh of relief. "Did I fail, or what?" "No, you didn't, my boy," said the old man. "To be honest, if I were in your shoes, I would have done the same. And you're right, being the Hokage comes with its own set of risks. The younger generation will look up to you as a hero, and your actions have inspired many more shinobi to become great in their own right. You should be pleased with yourself. Hello, Hiruzen-sensei. It means a lot coming from you." He returned his gaze to Kushina. Kushina, look after our son. I'm sorry if I won't be able to be with you, but please know that I'll always be there for you. In your head. And in your heart. I'll love you." His eyes slowly closed as his life faded away, and Kushina sobbed into his body. Hiruzen patted her head in an attempt to comfort her, but it had no effect on her. Unbeknownst to them, white chakra began quietly emerging from the hundreds of meteor fragments, eventually joining together to form one large chakra cloud. It seemed to have its own mind as it looked around the room until it came to a halt when it turned to the sleeping baby inside the blanket beside Kushina. The cloud flew towards the baby and paused for a moment to examine his body. After a minute, it began to enter his body via inhalation through both his mouth and nose. When the chakra cloud entered Naruto's body completely, his chest glowed white for 3 seconds before returning to his normal skin color. Hiruzen stood up and looked at Kushina, who still had fresh tears on her face, after 5 minutes of sobbing and sealing Minato's lifeless body in a scroll. "Take your son," he instructed. "We've got to get back. That masked man you mentioned earlier could still be nearby." She nodded and stood up as the two of them started walking back to the village. Many people died that day, and many people mourned the loss of their loved ones. But it was a total heartbreak for the people of the Leaf Village when they learned of the Yondaimi's death. People were sad on the day of his burial, but many people around the world celebrated his death. Minato Namikaze's death affected many people in some way, and one thing was certain. Nothing will ever be the same. 6 years ago, Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto Uzumaki stared out the window of his apartment at the village. 4 days have passed since his 7th birthday, and the only people present to celebrate it were Tucci, the owner of his favorite ramen shop, and his daughter, Ayame. His mother, Kushina, was not present because, well, she died 3 years ago during a mission. According to the Hokage, she was ambushed and kidnapped by an unknown group of S-class ninjas who tortured her for information, but she refused to give up. She died soon after as a result of her injuries. Konoha has since declared her a hero. Flashback. "Ka-san?" inquired a small Naruto. "I just saw you stuffing a lot of clothes into a big piece of paper. Are you going to abandon me?" Tears began to form in the corners of his eyes. Kushina laughed and knelt to ruffle Naruto's golden hair. Because of their yellow hair, he bears a striking resemblance to her late husband, Minato. But the boy stood out because he had whisker-like markings on the sides of his face, just like a cat. "Don't be silly, Naruto," she said, smiling. "Ka-san is only going to be gone for a few days due to a mission. I'll be back sooner than you think." Since Naruto's birth, she has resumed taking missions to supplement the family's income. "But you always say that and then come home late." The boy grumbled. "I'm concerned about you. What if you never return?" She indicated him with her index finger. "Never say that," she exclaimed. "Naruto, I will return. Have a little faith in me, okay?" Your Ka-san is regarded as one of the world's most powerful shinobi. I'll defeat all of the evil ninjas for you. She tickled him, causing him to laugh aloud. Do you want anything while I'm away? You name it, and I'll buy or find it for you. The young boy tapped his chin as he reflected on something he had always desired. I want a lifetime supply of ramen, exclaimed the boy, his mouth watering at the mention of his favorite food. Ramen it is, she exclaimed, pointing to the sky. She picked up the scroll on her bed, which had many items sealed inside it, after about 10 seconds. She was about to walk straight into the door when she dropped to her knees, as she had done previously. Be a good boy, please. I'll ask Hiruzen Gigi or Makoto Obasan to check in on you every now and then. Kushina hugged Naruto tightly before kissing him on the forehead. She gave him one last smile before walking out the door. He had no idea that this would be his last meeting with his mother. Flashback concludes. Naruto's vision was cut off as soon as he felt something bubbly hit his face and explode. It's a water balloon. The boy wiped the water from his face and looked down to see a group of children sticking their tongues out at him. Naruto sighed and returned to his loft. This usual bullying by other kids was something he was used to. Since Kushina's death, the villagers of Hidden Leaf Village have had the opportunity to vent their repressed hatred and anger on him. He was a painful reminder of the Kyuubi's attack many years before, and despite the Yondaime's wishes for him to be treated as a hero, he was treated like a poor ninja without a family. But the villagers had no idea the boy was the Yondaime's son, and if they had, it would have changed everything. People only know that Kushina was the one who looked after Naruto, not that she was his true mother. That's because Hiruzen, who was forced to take over as Hokage after Minato died, forbade anyone from even mentioning or saying anything about the nine-tailed fox. As a result, Naruto was finally treated like a normal Jinchuriki. Nobody dared to make Kushina angry or displeased while he was still alive. Because going against Naruto would result in the red-hot habanero, and no one in the shinobi world would dare to enrage the red-haired woman. Some were irritated and perplexed as to why a powerful ninja like her would bother to protect a demon child like him. The youngster was a demon. There had been several attempts on the boy's life, but each one had failed. Much of this was due to the fact that almost all of the failed attempts were carried out while Kushina was still alive. Hiruzen is well aware of how the people of Konoha treat Naruto, and he always assigns an Anbu member to keep an eye on him and protect him from harm should he ever require assistance. The clan heads had no reservations about Naruto because Hiruzen had fully explained the gravity and timeliness of the situation during the sealing of the Kyuubi 12 years ago. The civilian council, on the other hand, was a major thorn in the side. Since Kushina's death, they have always suggested assassinating the demon child to finish what Minato started, but all of their suggestions have been rejected. But that didn't stop them from doing it themselves, without anyone's permission, and for that, Naruto's personal Anbu bodyguards showed up. Naruto sighed and went to the shower to wash his hands. He took off his clothes and went inside. I'm not sure what I should do today, the blonde reflected. I could go to Ichiraku's for a quick bowl and then go train somewhere. He thought, smiling. Yeah, the academy is going to start accepting students soon, so I'm going to have to be really strong. If I want to be Hokage, I must. He grabbed his wallet from the top of his closet and dashed out the door after changing into a light green shirt and blue shorts. Along the way, the people of Konoha continued to give him murderous looks and insults. Some even threw objects at him, such as crumpled paper, tin cans, and small rocks. He tried to resist the urge to cry because it was something he did frequently. Fearing that things would spiral out of control if this continued, he began running towards Ichiraku's. But his path was cut short when a fat vendor stepped in front of him, his arms crossed and his gaze narrowed at the child. Naruto began to back away slowly, but the man grabbed the back of his shirt and effortlessly lifted him up so that they could see eye to eye. What do you expect from me? He stuttered, terrified of what the man would do to him, which only made the vendor and a few others who were surrounding them laugh in amusement. Well, well, well. He mockingly declared. The demon is in my grasp, and he has no way out. Ironic for someone with your abilities. Naruto gave a puzzled expression. I have no idea what you're talking about, mister. He tried to fight his way out of the guy's grasp, but it was futile. Please let me go. What have I done wrong? You demon, don't play games with us. Stop covering yourself up. He roared, enraged by Naruto's pathetic excuse, causing the boy to close his eyes in fear. You are well aware of what you did all those years ago, and it is now time to pay the price. Your mommy is no longer here to protect you. He finished by drawing a knife. Naruto's mental landscape. From inside his cage, Kurama witnessed the entire scene. He wanted to vent his rage on the jerk who had insulted Kushina. He tried punching the metal bars to get Naruto's attention. Hey, Kit! He exclaimed. Pay attention. You must allow me to give you power. I can give you some of my chakra to help you flee. He tried yelling, but there was no indication that Naruto could hear him. The fox eventually stopped punching and sat down to calm himself. Forget it. Because of the strength of the seal, he can't hear me. Kushina, I'm not sure how you manage to live with an idiot like your husband. You asked me to assist the Kit in times of need, but how can I do so if the seal Minato created is too powerful? He looked back at the vendor, who had a murderous look in his eyes. Alright, I'll just heal him. He made a decision as he scowled at the man in front of him. In Konoha. Die, demon. He yelled, thrusting his arm into the boy's chest. Naruto screamed and grabbed the sides of his head. Ah! His voice was loud enough to make the man drop his knife and put his hand to his ear to relieve his hearing. Naruto felt a sharp pain in his chest and quickly clutched it, but then he felt as if he was on fire inside. Arg! He yelled in agony, his eyes tightly shut. Hearing him scream without even touching him, the man came to a halt, his rage replaced by confusion. What was the demon child sobbing about? He was about to inquire as to what was wrong when Naruto's eyes widened to the size of saucers. Many people would say, never look into a Uchiha's eyes, and perhaps this rule also applies to demons like Naruto. Because the vendor who had just tried to kill him was now staring at the boy blankly, and everyone around them was wondering why he hadn't killed the child. Their issue would have been resolved. Unconsciously, Naruto sent a bit of chakra into his eyes as he looked curiously at the vendor who was still holding him up. He threw Naruto away as the kid landed a few meters away on his back. Screams of agony and pain suddenly filled the area as the blonde stood up and wiped the dirt off his body. Damn it you! You fucking monster! As he covered his eyes, the vendor yelled. You are going to pay for what you did to me. He stood up and hoped that someone would hear him. Do not stand there. Do you not see what he did to me? He removed his hands from his face and opened his eyes as gasps could be heard all around him. His eyes were completely white, with no pupil and only his cornea, similar to the eyes of the Leaf's mighty Hyuga clan. Unlike the clan, however, this could only mean one thing. He blinded me. Kill him right now. He sat down again and covered his eyes, hoping that someone would do the job for him. And please inform Hokage-sama of this. I'm sure the demon's execution will be the price for this crime. He finished with a grin as one of those around them began running up to the Hokage's mansion. Meanwhile, Naruto was perplexed as to what was going on. Had the fat man gone blind? And he was the one who was to blame. How could that be? He has no recollection of doing anything. And how could he possibly do that? For Kami's sake, he was just a kid. What the hell happened to that man? He wondered. Did he say I blinded him? However, I did nothing. How could his thoughts were cut short when more villagers surrounded him, holding various weapons. Nonetheless, they did not attack him right away. They were all staring at him. He began to turn around, only to see the same puzzled expression on their faces. The boy's brow furrowed in perplexity until he noticed a mirror outside a nearby store. He couldn't have been more surprised to see his own reflection. His eyes had turned a completely different color. Their usual blue color had changed to yellow. As in, bright yellow. And if that wasn't strange enough, his pupils had changed shape as well, from the normal circle of a normal person to an unusual shape that resembled a star. He took a step back unconsciously, afraid of what he looked like. Is this what the vendor meant earlier? Was he a true demon? When he heard people screaming, he was forced to look around him. 7 villagers lunged at him, their weapons drawn and ready to strike. Naruto crouched down, covered his ears, and screamed, hoping that everything that was happening right now was an illusion. The blonde let out a small gust of wind. Maybe? The wind emerged from his body in a circular pattern, pushing everyone back as they landed on their backs. Naruto realized he was still alive when he opened his eyes. How could that be? Wasn't he about to be killed? That reason, however, did not last long as he stood up and looked around him. Everyone who was about to attack him was lying on their backs, either in pain or unconscious. In perplexity, Naruto scratched the side of his head. What occurred? They all had killer intent in their bodies but are now lying on the ground. While the blonde was trying to figure out what was going on, the fox within him was having his own questions. Naruto's mental landscape. Kurama's eyes widened as he noticed Naruto's eyes change. He was aware that Kushina had no bloodline because the Uzumaki clan lacked one. And he was certain that the Yondaime lacked one as well. But why does their son have a peculiar jutsu? The yellow color indicated that it was not the Sharingan or Byakugan. And, aside from the two, the fox remembered one other jutsu from his past, his father's, his creator's, eyes. Rinnegan Naruto's eyes, however, are not the same as his father's. Kurama was perplexed, trying to figure out what was going on. What the hell is this jutsu? He wondered. I've never seen anything like this before. Yellow eyes, a star in the middle. The beast was completely perplexed by Naruto at the time, and he groaned. Where do you find the old man when you need him? He's got to know what's up with the kid's eyes. Even I am astounded by what he is capable of. But, in the meantime, he said as he looked at Naruto. Let's see what else those eyes can do. I want to see how powerful they are, and maybe I can tell you if I know them. In Konoha. Just as Naruto was about to give up trying to figure out what had happened, he heard multiple voices from behind him and turned around to see more villagers giving him cold and ruthless looks. Because he was standing in the middle of 7 people who had died, the villagers who arrived assumed he was to blame. After all, he was known as the demon. The demon has killed yet again, exclaimed one woman. Hokage-sama, he must be executed. He brought those people down, exclaimed another. He is a true monster. Let's take him down before he hurts any more of us, yelled one determined man. Yeah, exclaimed the other men in unison. When he saw more than 10 men running after him, Naruto was forced to take steps back until he tripped over a rock and landed on his buttocks. When they got closer by the second, the blonde stood up and ran as fast as he could, hoping to make it out alive. Naruto felt like he was about to collapse less than a minute later. Because, whether he liked it or not, he was still a child, and his endurance in the eyes of a shinobi is disappointing. He was so focused on his heartbeat that he didn't notice a small rock in front of him and tripped. The boy closed his eyes and braced for the impact, but just as his face touched the dirt, his body became enveloped in yellow light as he dashed off with incredible speed, leaving the men chasing him stunned, not because the demon escaped, but because the trick the boy used to escape was similar to the legendary Hiraishin jutsu of the Yondaime. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and realized he wasn't on the ground. He was hovering. His brow furrowed, but when he looked to his side, he was passing by buildings and people in a blur. He looked down to see himself covered in yellow light on his arm, and the next thing he did was feel beneath him to see if there was any trick behind this. He can't just happen to fly through the village. While he was relieved to have escaped his attackers, he was unsure whether he was dreaming or not. To his utter surprise, there was nothing beneath him. He is truly levitating. How fantastic would this be for his life? Being able to fly so quickly could be a one-way ticket to becoming Hokage, which was his dream. However, all good things must come to an end when he became so engrossed in the sensation of flying that he failed to notice the tree he was approaching. As anime tears filled his eyes, his head collided with the tree. When he hit the tree, his body stopped glowing, and he remained parallel to the ground for a few seconds before falling. His eyes returned to normal without his knowledge. Naruto's mental landscape. Kurama was completely taken aback by what he had just witnessed with Naruto. His jaw was clenched, and his eyes were as big as dinner plates. He shook his head and began to consider what he had seen. Human flight? He wondered. How is that even possible? I've never seen anyone who can fully levitate in the air since my father. Father was able to fly because he was the Jubi's Jinchuriki, but no one else has succeeded. The closest I've ever seen are shinobi who can glide through, but this kit. An image of Naruto flashed through his mind. He was just flying through the air. And his flying speed is incredible, like a meteor in space, he continued, placing a finger beneath his chin. Earlier, his raw speed surpassed even Minato. That blonde idiot built his reputation through teleportation, not speed. Naruto, in my opinion, is faster than him. Kurama lied back down inside his cage, having decided that enough curiosity was enough for the time being. On second thought, Kushina, being trapped inside this kit's body might not be as bad as I thought. I mean, look at me now, I'm impressed by a child. And it's only getting started. He joked as he continued to watch Naruto. In Konoha. Naruto rose from the ground, a huge lump on his head from colliding head first with the tree. What in the world just happened? He exclaimed. He sat up slowly, scowling at the tree he had just crashed into. Stupid tree. He exclaimed, punching the trunk as he did so. You just ruined my good time. He looked at himself and noticed that the yellow light that had been enveloping him earlier had vanished. He sighed, but a determined expression spread across his face. He clapped his hands together and tried to concentrate solely on the image of himself flying earlier. Let's see if I can pull it off again. Seconds passed with no action. Come on, I know I can do it. He exclaimed as he concentrated more on flying. Seconds turned into minutes, and he finally decided it was pointless to try again. I wonder. Why can't I do it again? He pondered. If I wasn't dreaming earlier, I actually flew. I mean, I collided with a tree, right? Then why? He considered various explanations until one particular thought occurred to him. Does it have anything to do with my new eyes? Is there some kind of a... His thoughts were cut short when he heard multiple shurikens being thrown nearby. He decided to put the matter aside for the time being and search for the source of the noise. The blonde continued walking until he saw someone his size throwing shurikens at multiple targets around him, which drew Naruto's attention. The mysterious individual was training near the Uchiha compound, using various training dummies as targets. Wait a minute, someone's training over there. Naruto pondered. I need to get a better look at this. He started walking silently towards the person, and the blonde hid behind a tree where he could easily see him train. The person, who was a kid and a boy like Naruto, jumped into the air and began spinning around, throwing kunais in various directions, almost all of which hit their designated targets. One in front of him, one near a small puddle nearby, one near Naruto's tree behind him, and one near the Uchiha compound's wall. He did, however, miss one target, which was a dummy at the top of the tree in front of him. The boy sighed in frustration and wiped sweat from his brow. He took a step away from his training area and into the open field. He made a few hand gestures and began a jutsu. Kaiten. Jikaki no jutsu. Exclaimed the boy, exhaling a medium-sized ball of flames for a few seconds before it died down. He panted briefly before sitting on the grass and gazing up at the sky. I'm going to need to train more every day if I want to defeat Ni-san one day, he thought to himself before turning around due to a sudden clapping of hands. He noticed a boy his age with blonde hair and blue eyes. He looked up at the sky as he sat down beside him. I saw your Kaiten Jutsu, exclaimed the blonde. It was really cool, and I wanted to try it as well. Maybe I'll have Gigi teach me when I start at the academy. Who are you, and were you spying on me? The youngster inquired. He wore a black shirt with white shorts and had jet black hair that was pointed down. Oh, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, exclaimed the blonde proudly, holding out his hand for him to shake. Yu Kaiha Sasuke, the raven-haired boy said, hesitantly accepting Naruto's simple act of friendship. To be honest, this was the first time he had accepted a handshake from another kid. And it wasn't because the Uchiha clan was averse to socializing. They found themselves staring at the sky together as soon as they stopped shaking hands. Naruto broke the silence in order to respond to a question. By the way, just so you know, I wasn't spying on you. I happened to pass by when I saw you hitting those dummies with kunais earlier. That was pretty cool, I must say, he said with a smile. Thank you, but I don't deserve your compliment, Sasuke said as he walked away. If I want to beat him, I still have a lot to learn. Hit him? What are you on about? My brother, he exclaimed, widening Naruto's eyes. Why? Is he tough? Do you aspire to be like him? Sasuke snapped at Naruto and looked him in the eyes. But his eyes were red, and he had two tomos, which made Naruto shiver. The Sharingan was the culprit. I'll never be like him, he vowed to the blonde. Compare me to him again, and I'll personally see to it that you die. Naruto threw up his arms in surrender. Okay, my apologies. Simply close your eyes. You're terrifying me. Sasuke's eyes instantly closed as he hissed in pain. Naruto patted him on the shoulder, concerned. Are you okay? What occurred? I'm fine, he said as he gently brushed Naruto's hand away from his shoulder. I'm just getting used to my new eyes. Are there new eyes? I have the Sharingan because I am a Uchiha. My eyes are extremely powerful. However, for some reason, I am unable to control when it is activated or deactivated. This was the first time Naruto had heard of the term. Sharingan? Sasuke's eyes may have scared him a while ago, but the name itself is cool. Who can say? Because Sasuke's eyes are unusual, he might be able to assist the blonde in determining what's wrong with his own. Sharingan? Inquired the blonde. Does it have anything to do with your vision? Sasuke gave a nod. What exactly does it do? For a brief moment, Sasuke stroked his chin. You understand? I'm not sure either, he jokingly scratched the back of his head, causing them both to laugh. Ka-san taught me that it can copy ninjutsu and is very powerful in genjutsu. Wow! Exclaimed Naruto, stunned. You must be incredibly strong. No, because I still have a lot to learn. As I previously stated, I must be extremely strong in order to defeat my brother. I must defeat him because he was responsible for the deaths of the majority of my clan's members, including my father. Oh, see, could you tell me why he did it? He had to have a reason for doing it. I'm not sure. But I'll tell you when I find out, okay? That's all right. That's settled, Naruto. What do you think about some training? Do you have any ninjutsu knowledge? Naruto raised his head. So, let me show you some of the jutsus I know. The academy will begin accepting students very soon, and you must prepare in advance so that you can succeed. Naruto was taken aback. Really? You do something like that? Are you scared of me? Sasuke chuckled. Why should I be scared of you? You're a kid, just like me. The blonde scratched the back of his neck. Well, for some reason I don't understand, a lot of the villagers refer to me as a demon child. This caused Sasuke's eyes to open wide. Wait, you're the one who gets kicked out of most stores. The blonde nodded slowly, not wanting to recall the times when people would chase him out of buildings and stores. How come you didn't say so? Naruto cocked his brow. Let's get this party started. I'm going to teach you the fundamentals. Sasuke stood up, but the blonde's voice held him motionless. Wait a second. Naruto abruptly announced. What's the matter? Sasuke inquired, raising an eyebrow. Surely, since you have the Sharingan, you must know something about my eyes, Naruto admitted. How about your vision? So, as I mentioned earlier, my eyes are a different color. They were blue instead of blue. Then the black thing in the middle appeared to be the sun. Sasuke's laughter cut him off before he could finish his sentence. Stop being silly, Naruto, and let's get this party started, he said, a small smile on his face. You're not going to get anywhere being that lazy. Naruto exhaled a sigh. So, Sasuke, you don't know anything about my eyes? I know my Sharingan is cool, but Naruto, you need to get your head out of the clouds. Nothing is wrong with your eyes. They are simply blue. Naruto's eyes widened as he raised his head. What? What do you mean by blue? They were previously glowing yellow. I'm not sure what you're talking about, but if you want to learn some jutsu from me, come to my training area with me. Sasuke began walking towards the location near the Uchiha compound where he had been training earlier. Naruto's brow furrowed in perplexity before he sighed and stood up. Perhaps it was all a dream. He lamented as he began to follow his newfound friend. Naruto's mental landscape. Kit, you have no idea how wrong you are. Kurama considered the events that had just occurred. It appears that his new eyes have only recently awakened. I'm not sure when, but I have a feeling he'll use it again. And, if this is a bloodline, Naruto must have been injected or infused with the chakra of some unknown clan. When he looked around, he was met with the sight of his cage. Damn it, if I could just get out of here, I could figure out where that chakra is in the kid's body. If that happens, I might be able to figure out what kind of jutsu Naruto possesses. I can tell from what I saw earlier that its abilities are quite powerful. With nothing interesting to watch about Naruto at the moment, the fox lied down and tried to sleep. By the streets of Konoha. The villager who went to the Hokage mansion to report Naruto's actions had just returned to the scene where the blonde had earlier blinded the fat vendor. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Hokage, was with him, accompanied by 2 ANBUs. Hokage-sama, he's arrived. He's arrived. The villager exclaimed as he led the sandame to the fat vendor, who was leaning against a small carriage and staring at the ground. He approached the vendor and inquired, what happened? Damn demon got away, he snarled, pointing to the other villagers who remained unconscious on the ground. Does Hokage-sama accompany you? He gave a nod. Then tell him that the demon took away my sight and killed villagers, and I demand his execution immediately. Hiruzen took a step forward, his gaze narrowed at the villagers in front of him. Something was wrong. As he sighed, he exhaled smoke from his pipe. All right, enough pretending from the lot of you, he said calmly. Hokage-sama, what do you mean? Asked the vendor, his eyes closed as he looked up at the old man. I'm not sure what Naruto did to you, but you obviously provoked him first. You are not deafeningly you'd better admit it or I'll summon Ibiki and Anko to question you. And believe me, they are far more intimidating than I am. The vendor scoffed and slowly opened his eyes, a disgusted expression on his face. His eyes had returned to normal color and he could see clearly, proving that he hadn't been blinded. In reality, his vision was indeed cut off, but only for a few minutes. He pretended to be disabled in order to persuade the Hokage to execute the Gaki earlier. However, it did not work. Of course, he was irritated that he didn't get his wish, which was the demon child's death. Hiruzen turned to face the people who were unconscious on the ground. Anyone who remains on the ground after the count of 3 will be placed on probation, he warned. And before he could even begin to count, all of the villagers who had been blown away by Naruto earlier were already on their feet, bearing the same expression as the vendor. "I assume you were all the ones who started this delusion?" he asked, dissatisfied with the villagers' attitude. They all nodded. "Could you tell me why you're doing this?" "All we wanted was for the demon Gaki to pay for what he'd done and to finish what the Yondaime had started," the fat man snarled. "We're all wondering why Kushina-san would think of treating him like a son. The village would be a lot better if he was there, eh?" "Silence!" yelled Hiruzen. He can understand why the villagers dislike the blonde, but he would never accept it if either of his parents were involved. "I'm tired of hearing the same reasons again." Hiruzen paused for a moment to collect himself. If that boy was the demon, he would have destroyed the village by now. "But, Hokage-sama," a villagers objected. "Will we just sit around and wait? The Kyuubi could appear at any time. As the Sandaime Hokage, I advise you to return to your homes and reflect on what you've done. I'll talk to young Naruto and get his side of the story. If I find out that you were the ones who provoked him, you will face the consequences. Is that clear?" Despite their reluctance, all of the villagers nodded. "Then proceed. I need to find Naruto." Hiruzen began to walk away, leaving an irritated group of people moping about how lucky demons were. 4 hours later, on the outskirts of Konoha, Sasuke's training grounds. "Well done, Naruto!" Sasuke exclaimed, clapping his hands. It was unusual for a Uchiha to respect, let alone compliment, his opponent's abilities. "You learned Fireball and Dragonfire Jutsu in less than a day. That's something I've never seen before. Of course, I had some assistance from you." The blonde scratched his hair and wiped sweat from his neck and brow. Then he felt his stomach churn. "Hey, want to go get something to eat?" he asked, picturing Ichiraku ramen in his mind. "I know where we can fill our stomachs. Believe me, the food is delicious." "Oh, I don't know, I should probably get a—" The raven-haired boy was interrupted by a familiar voice in the distance. "Sasuke-kun!" exclaimed the voice. "Who was that?" asked Naruto, looking in the direction of the voice. "It's Ka-san," Sasuke replied. "Wait a minute, I'll introduce you to her." "Wait, won't she be upset with me?" "In any case, almost everyone in the village does." "She won't, believe me." "Naruto, don't worry," assured Sasuke. "She's very nice, and you'll enjoy her." "If you say so," Naruto sighed. When Sasuke's mother, Makoto Uchiha, arrived at the location where her son would always train, she noticed a blonde-haired boy standing alongside her son. The boy appeared to be familiar, and she was trying to recall where she had seen him. She raised an eyebrow as she approached the two. "Sasuke-kun," she said. "Who is this young man with you?" "His name is Naruto Uzumaki, Ka-san." Makoto's eyes widened as soon as she heard his name. "I met him earlier today and taught him a few of the fire jutsus I know," exclaimed Sasuke, full of pride after teaching a friend. She looked at Naruto, who was shyly looking down at the ground. "Uzumaki? You can't possibly be Kushina's son, can you?" she inquired. At the sound of his mother's name, Naruto's head shot up. "You know Ka-san?" he replied in disbelief. "Of course I know Kushina," she declared. "We were best friends and rivals back then. Come to think of it, this is the second time I saw you, Naruto." The blonde's eyebrows furrowed. "The first was during the time I was in the hospital to give birth to Sasuke-kun." She was carrying you while waiting outside my room. My name is Yukaiha Makoto, but you can call me Makoto Obasan, Naruto-kun. Sure thing, Makoto Obasan. Now that's settled, where were you two heading? You looked like you were off to somewhere before you saw me. Oh, I was about to lead Sasuke to Ichiraku Ramen so we could eat there. They have the best ramen in the whole world. Makoto crossed her arms and smirked. So you inherited Kushina's addiction to ramen? I'm not surprised at all. Your mom will always go for ramen as her food during our academy days. I'll go with you too and Naruto, I'm gonna tell you more about Kushina when we get there. Naruto only grinned in response. And Sasuke dear, treat this as dinner for the night, okay? I didn't cook anything when I left the house, anyway. Sasuke nodded as Naruto sprinted past them, excited at eating his favorite ramen. Ramen, here I come. He yelled out of joy, leaving the two Yukaihas shaking their heads at his eagerness. Was his mom like this too? Asked Sasuke with a smirk as he looked up at his mother. She's a lot worse, answered Makoto with a grin as Sasuke's sweat dropped. 1 hour later, Ichiraku Ramina. Hey, old man. Another bowl, I'm still starving. Exclaimed Naruto as he finished his 7th bowl of ramen while Sasuke and Makoto were eating the 2nd and 4th, respectively. Right away, Naruto. Replied Tucci with a salute, causing Ayame to giggle at her father's antics. Oh, and Naruto, Makoto continued. The past hour was spent with them talking about the woman's past and her memories with Kushina and the past generation of shinobis. There was also a time when Kushina was afraid of a little insect. Naruto raised an eyebrow, ready to listen. During her 17th birthday, while we were eating at her house, there was a fly in her plate with her birthday cake. She didn't notice it at first, but when she was about to eat the cake, she saw the fly and she threw the plate to the wall. She finished while laughing, which also got the two kids to laugh. The memory was still fresh in her mind. Naruto was about to respond when he noticed someone take a seat beside him. It was the Hokage himself. Gigi? The blonde asked, used to calling the Sandaime by that nickname. What brings you here? Tucci-san, 1 bowl of miso ramen, would you please? Hiruzen asked calmly. Sure thing, Hokage-sama, the chef replied, having recovered from his surprised state of seeing the leader of the village in his restaurant. It was a rare sighting for the Hokage to be seen eating at a regular restaurant, let alone a place like Ichiraku's. Hiruzen turned to Naruto with eyes of concern. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? He asked. Did the villagers try to hurt you again? Naruto's eyes widened. Did the old man know about what happened earlier this day? Is something wrong, Hokage-sama? Makoto asked, curious about what is happening. Oh, nothing, Makoto-chan, it's just that the villagers won't stop bothering Naruto again. I heard that the boy was about to be killed earlier in one of the streets, he finished, getting a gasp from Ayame, Tucci, Makoto, and Sasuke. You know, Gigi? Asked Naruto, fearing that the old man could be angry with him. Naruto-kun, he ruffled the boy's hair. I need you to tell me everything that happened from the start. Do it and the ones that tried to kill you would be punished. And so Naruto explained to everyone in the restaurant what situation he was in earlier. He told them about how the fat vendor accused him of blinding him, to his escape by flying through the village as fast anyone could never imagine. The part where Naruto explained himself flying found to be less believable by Makoto and Sasuke, but Hiruzen was actually curious with what Naruto was saying. The part where he also said how he blinded the fat man and pushed all the villagers back was less believable too. But it was yet another thing that made Hiruzen interested in learning more about the boy. Wow, this ramen hit the spot. The Sandaime announced as he stood up and stretched his back. He turned to everyone inside. I apologize, but I must return to the mansion. He looked at Naruto. Don't worry, Naruto. I'll make sure those men will be punished. He gave the boy a thumbs up before leaving the place. While walking back, the old man was deep in thought. The things that Naruto-kun said, he started. Blinding an enemy, pushing many back with force and flight, they are totally not believable for a kid at his age. Yet it isn't impossible too. An image of Minato and Kushina appeared in his mind. Minato, Kushina, I wonder what's wrong with your Childa. I'm sure he wasn't lying when he said those things, but how did he pull it off? Was it because of the Kyuubi or something else? He didn't realize it, but he was now in front of the door to his front desk. That Gaki caught my interest now, huh? I should have Anbu to start spying on him next week. With them, they'll figure out if he was telling the truth as well as know what Naruto-kun can really do. He opened the door and was greeted by every Kage's worst nightmare. Paperwork. Curse you, Minato, he complained with a loud groan.